So hello, welcome to our interview with the Quick Reads 2020 authors, Evan Morgan-Jones and Alison Stokes are joining me today. So I'll pass over to them to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Evan Morgan-Jones. I'm an author of 5 novels now, including this very short quick read, which has come out, which is a Welsh sci-fi book written in English about a man who goes down to the Cantref Gwylod of Welsh mythology. So I hope you'll pick up a copy and enjoy it.
I'm Alison Stokes and I'm the author of Dogs for Life, a collection of true tales of pets with a purpose, which, as it says, is real life stories of a selection of support dogs and therapy dogs and the help they give to their human friends.
So obviously it's been a long awaited process, hasn't it, in the terms of getting the books published, and a lot of your hard work has gone into getting us to that stage. But it's wonderful now to speak with you both and just as we kind of launch these out into the public. So first of all, as you both, have authored other books, I know even this is your first book for the Quick Reads, but I just wanted to ask you both really, how did the process of writing a quick read, how did it compare to writing, your other novels? So Evan, if I could ask you that first, because obviously it's also in a different language, isn't it, to your other novels? So I wondered how that compared.
It was a very interesting process because I think that probably the main difference was the length, I think, which you'd think it would be easier to write a 20,000 word book than I think my last 2 novels were something like 120,000 words or something like that. So you'd think, oh, it's only 20,000, it's going to be easier. But I think there's a quote by Mark Twain that says something like, sorry for the long letter, I haven't had the chance to write a short one. So it can actually be much more difficult at times, I think, to shorten a work down. And I did think, oh, it's only 20,000 words. And then I started writing and I'd written about the first chapter and it was already about 10,000 words. And I was thinking, all right, how am I actually going to get through this story I want to tell in 20,000 words? So there was a lot of chopping down and slimlining and sort of cutting things down. But I think it's a better novel for having gone through that process of editing things down as well. I think it's very interesting because I usually write fiction in the Welsh language, but I usually do journalism work in the English language. And I think that sort of suited this novel well because it needed to be written in quite sort of understandable language that anyone could read. I think that's what you aim for when you write in sort of a journalism article as well. So I think the fact that I'm used to writing sort of journalism articles recently in English sort of suited this novel quite well in writing this for the Quick Reads, I think.
Yeah, I think it definitely did, it's a skill I thought that you encapsulated, quite a different sort of world and, the sort of all the elements that you brought in, but you did that, within the sort of concise nature of the Quick Read. So definitely, I think, as you say, that journalism skill, I'm sure, stood you in good stead. I mean, Alison, you also have got experience of journalism. Do you find that helped you with your books?
Yeah, definitely. I think if anything, it was very similar in the kind of finding different stories, doing research online, going onto social media and news websites and looking for the type of stories I would want to tell, then tracking down the people behind those stories and approaching them. So that was very much very much journalism. But the actual, like Evan already said, the actual language and the simplicity of keeping it fairly simple, very short, not going into, going off on a sort of a flight of fantasy and long flowery words, and again that's very much a journalism thing. You don't over egg the pudding.
Okay.
And you wouldn't use a phrase like that in a quick read because an emergent reader wouldn't understand what over egging the pudding meant.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how, because obviously the quick reads, as you've mentioned, they are sort of set to a little bit of a different guideline to make them really accessible for everyone, that can pick them up. And obviously then it does have a slightly different editing process as well, doesn't it, to some standard novels. So it goes through, maybe a few more edits. And do you find that is helpful as an author, or can it be difficult as well.
I found it really useful because the editor, the literary editor that worked on these books, I think she brought her fiction style into it slightly. So there were things that she kind of picked up on, sort of beefing up some of the things where I'd oversimplified it in some places. So that was quite a useful thing to do and work with her on that. But yeah, and otherwise it's a case of like when you're writing, you think, oh, you sort of read back and think, okay, yeah, will everyone understand it? You have to kind of appeal to everyone, and sort of those sort of people who haven't got the reading skills that authors would have. So yeah.
What about you, Ivan? How did you find the editing process of this? Was it different?
Yeah, I think it was okay. I was very lucky. I had a fantastic editor in Crystal Jeans who went through, and I think the important thing I learned was that just because the language needs to be simpler, that doesn't mean the characterization and the plot and other elements of the book need to be simple as well. So I think it was quite difficult because I was writing a sci-fi book. There were some concepts within the book that were quite sort of difficult to explain in very simple language, and there was some sort of jargon I wanted to sort of invent for the book, as well as anyone who writes a sci-fi book wants to do. But I found the editing process very rewarding, and in fact I think it sort of it improves you as an author because. If you look at some of the best authors out there, they don't write in very flowery language. Anyway, they do write in language that anyone can understand. So I think essentially any author should set out to write a book that can be read by emerging readers as well.
And what about, so it's, I think Nielsen Book Data did a survey recently that showed that I think the amount of people that have turned to books during lockdown has doubled. So I don't know, why do you think that is, Ivan? Why would you think?
I think we've got more time for one thing because we're sort of, a lot of us are stuck indoors. I also think that a book gives you a lot of what sort of social interaction would give you otherwise. If you can't go out there and actually meet people, if you read a book and you learn about sort of new characters, they go on adventures, hopefully their sort of personalities change. You go on an emotional journey as well. So I think really that a good book or a good novel is sort of a good substitute as well for that kind of social interaction that some of us have been denied during this lockdown.
Yeah, definitely. Alison, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with what Ivan said, and I think say with the time and also with the accessibility, because we can't go out, but if you've got an e-reader, you can download any book you want at the moment, and so everything being online, it's a great way to get new material, new content. It's funny, I was talking to my mum the other day, who's the over 70s, and she's been in now for 10 weeks and behaving herself, and she was saying that there's loads of box sets I've bought her for the previous Christmases, and she's now reading through all of those because she's got the time, and that's just like a lot of people in her position at the moment.
I think I've heard a lot of people say, and myself included, that we've turned to the bookshelves and all the books that I haven't read yet. You sort of think, oh, well, now is the time to maybe pick up some of those, and there's book swaps that have been happening as well. Where people have been posting books to each other, because obviously it's great to have the online, the ebooks and things as well, isn't it? But also it's great. It does make you value the libraries and the bookshops, when you can't actually access them as much as you were before. It sort of, it reminds you how important they are. I mean, what do you both like to read? What kind of books, would you turn to when you're, in your downtime, as it were? Alison, what do you tend to read?
I like sort of mostly fiction, so I like a lot of crime fiction, and suspense thriller-y type fiction. I also like things like Sarah Waters and that sort of historical, really good gripping historical fiction, and autobiographies. I enjoy reading about other people's lives, and especially comedians. I do like sort of comedian and rock star autobiographies and the bad behavior.
Love a good comedian sort of autobiography. What about you, Ivan?
It tends to be quite a close relationship between what I'm reading and what I'm writing. So if I'm writing about a particular subject, such as this book about sort of Welsh mythology and science fiction, or my last book, which was sort of set in the 19th century, I'll try and read as many books as possible around that topic. So I'll read fiction books, and I'll also read sort of academic papers and academic books about that subject as well. And I tend to get sort of quite obsessive about this sort of single subject that I'm researching, and just read everything I can about that. And as I sort of go around like a magpie reading things, if there's any sort of interesting things in there, I think would sort of add value to my book, so from the academic writing and interesting ideas, I just sort of think, oh, that would make a sort of a great part of the book. So I just sort of, I run over to my laptop and I sort of write down a few notes, and then I go back to the book afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it, to think of that sort of symbiotic relationship in a way that it sort of sparks off maybe some ideas, for the book, as well as obviously informing, the background of them. I mean, that leads on in a way. One of the things I was going to ask was, what was it about the myth of Cantref Gwaelod that appealed to you as the foundation of the book, really? And I was going to ask, what research you did, before writing the book.
Well, I'm quite lucky because I'm a staff member at Bangor University. They've got a very large section on sort of Welsh mythology, so I could sort of go into this fantastic library and sort of wander around and pick these books off the shelves and read about the sort of the history of the myth of Cantref Gwaelod. Sort of what I was sort of partly trying to do with the book was tell a story, a sort of an equally Welsh science fiction book. And there hasn't been much written about science fiction around sort of Welsh Wales and around Welsh culture either. So I had a lot of interest in Afrofuturism as well, which is sort of science fiction that comes from Africa, or sort of African American experiences. And what I saw that Afrofuturism was trying to do was to sort of imagine a future for a people that sort of often get their future sort of taken away from them. And I thought, not to compare the sort of experience of people in Wales with sort of African Americans or anything like that, but I thought that, very often Welsh culture is portrayed as something sort of fantasy orientated, not sort of technologically orientated. So I thought that by writing a story about that, I could sort of turn that on its head a little bit and sort of imagine a science fiction future for Welsh culture. I've always been sort of very, very interested in sort of the tale of Cantref Gwaelod itself. I actually live now on in Ceredigion near the coast, where the sort of the tale is set. But I think the sort of idea of Cantref Gwaelod sort of still being there has been in my head since I was about sort of 14 years old. And I thought it'd be great if I could write a story about someone who actually sort of goes down there and see this sort of civilization and the sea that's sort of still intact, but has sort of developed alongside, but sort of differently from the civilization on the shore.
No, it's really interesting because it is quite a different concept, really, isn't it? When you apply that to Wales, and I think you said that you had almost created a new genre when you were writing this. But
well, there is some Welsh sci-fi out there, but there's not as much as you'd expect. I don't think. There's a lot of sort of fantasy writing influenced by Welsh culture. You've got Lord of the Rings, you've got Game of Thrones, everything like that. But we don't seem to have as much of an impact on the science fiction genre yet. So it's nice to get some Welsh science fiction out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Alison, obviously your book, as you said, is around true life stories. And obviously the tales in the book, feature a lot of different sort of assistants and therapy dogs. And at times, when I was reading the book, it really, was very emotional, some of the stories, and, some of them are quite heartbreaking, aren't they? Not wishing to give away any spoilers. But I mean, how do you find that difficult to write about things that are sort of so emotional?
Not difficult as such. I think it's because, again, going back to the journalism training and background, you kind of almost become, you're so used to telling awful, bad, terrible, heart-wrenching tales or uplifting tales that I don't find it difficult, but what I do find is that I cry at the drop of a hat. So it's really embarrassing because I'm sitting there with someone and they're telling me their story and I'm just in tears, and it's I was like, pull yourself together. And then when you're writing it, sometimes it's you find yourself like, I get so into it and I really try and put myself then in, and I try, because I generally write in that person's voice, so I try so hard to put myself in their position and again read, like even with his science fiction, reading up lots of background on whatever the condition might be or whatever the situation might be, or go online and looking for videos so I can get in my head what it's like to be that person in that place at that time. And yeah, sometimes I'm sitting there writing and thinking, holding back tears, thinking, oh, this is so awful how they went through that and came out the other side, and still have a happy, inspiring. It's just incredible. So yeah,
I think you've achieved that very well. Definitely it comes across, I think, as you're reading the book, the individual voices of the people that you're kind of telling the stories. So that is definitely a skill, isn't it, to kind of portray that, and also join it together in one book, isn't it? I mean, personally, I feel that's the strength of the Quick Read series, is that there's so much different genres, different styles of book, different authors, so there is something we hope for everyone to kind of choose from. And sometimes, I find myself picking up a book that I wouldn't normally read, something about sports maybe or something. And, because they're short, they're accessible and they're easy to read, you do, get a glimpse into something that I wouldn't maybe necessarily pick up, a larger book. So I don't know if that's something you found yourself, as individuals.
I remember back a couple of years ago, you did one with the surfing community when they were kind of going storm chasing, and it was fascinating. It was, again, something I would never have, in a million years thought I would have enjoyed, but it was just so. And you were so quick, you pick it up and you start reading, you're into it straight away, and then next thing you finished it. And that's the beauty of quick reads, that it drags you in quickly and keeps you going, yes. And then it's over. You've read it in no time.
Yeah, sometimes it wants you leaving more, doesn't wanting more. I find so there's always scope maybe to follow up with a sequel or a longer length version.
And I suppose that is the beauty of quick reads as well, isn't it? That those people who may have fallen out of love with reading will read something and think, oh, I really enjoyed that. I'm going to go and find something else by that person, or something in that genre that there's more. So, yeah.
And I think, although many people have turned more to reading maybe, during this time, I think also it has been difficult to maybe concentrate for a long time on things. So, I think the quick reads are perfect for that. You can pick them up, you can just read a chapter, or you can, if you're a quick reader, you can read it all, maybe in one day or something. Just, it's quite versatile, isn't it, to suit quite a lot of different people, so... Well, to finish off then, I was going to ask you, obviously we've spoken about, ebooks and the different types of books and things. I mean, what do you personally have a preference? If you think of physical books, ebooks or audiobooks. Ivan, do you have a preference of which type?
I'm not a big listener of audiobooks. Personally, I'll listen to lots of podcasts in the car while I'm driving. But living in rural West Wales, I have to do quite a lot of driving. But in terms of physical books or ebooks, it depends entirely on the weight of the book, I think. There are a few books that have come out, sort of hardback, sort of behemoths, that I have sort of picked up in the shop, and I thought, if I'm going to try and read this in sort of physical book size, my wrists are going to start hurting quite quickly, so I've downloaded those on the ebook. But if there's something like sort of a quick read or a sort of a small paperback book, I'll tend to get the physical copy of those.
Alison, what about yourself? Do you have a preference?
A bit like Ivan, I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks, only say because I generally like Ivan, sort of listen to podcasts if I'm sort of on car journeys. Although I do occasionally listen to audiobooks. I think the Margaret Atwood Testaments, when they radio forwarded that a couple of months ago, that was the last one I listened to, and I enjoyed that. But again, ebook versus print, I think they've both got their merits. It depends where I am. If I'm going on long journey, and I need more than one book, then it's going to be an ebook. But you don't have the same level of engagement with an ebook that you do with a physical. You know, you've got the cover, you open the cover, you read, and you, even though you might have 100 books on your Kindle or other device, you don't have the same sort of thing of picking it out and choosing to read that one. And but they both work for me, depending on where I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah, and as you've both said, they all have their merits, don't they? So it's good that you have so much choice. But okay, well, diolch yn fawr. Thank you so much, Ifan and Alison, for your time today. It's been wonderful to get a glimpse into your lives and influences as authors. And thanks very much for your time.